opposition reaction. Melissa Lantsman is the deputy leader of the Conservative Party, and Peter Julian is the NDP's House leader. Ms. Lantsman, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to something that Mr. Holland had said just there. He described the criticism that has been brought forward by your party's leader, Pierre Poilievre, suggesting that Canada is broken and that Canadians feel this sense that something isn't right. He described it as irresponsible, saying it's profoundly disturbing. How do you react to that?
Well, Mr. Holland also said that Canada is doing exceptionally well, and I don't know which constituents he's been talking to, but certainly when we've been away on a break over the last month and a half from this place, you know that that's not true. That after 8 years of the Prime Minister, we've seen results of 1.5 million Canadians using food banks, rent at record rates, housing prices out of control, and students actually living in shelters while they go to school. That's not a sign of a Canada that's doing exceptionally well. So I take exception to that statement. I think there are some Canadians who are doing exceptionally well, and those are probably the well-connected lobbyists and friends of the Prime Minister, like those who got $100 million or an amount that we don't know about from places like McKinsey.
Ms. Lantsman, I'm going to ask you one follow-up. While there is plenty, in this conversation that we're going to have here, there's going to be plenty of opportunity for you to level your critiques against the government. But I'm just curious, at the start of this sitting, is there any area where you think the Conservatives and the Liberals can cooperate together on solutions on, pick your area? Is there anything you think that there can be cooperation on?
Absolutely. There's always times that we can cooperate in this House, and we want to see more affordable childcare, for example, in this country. But we want to see it include choice. We want to see it include, religious operators and home daycares and many generational households where grandparents take care. And we want to see the value of that work and that childcare be rewarded and not just have one program. So certainly we can make things better, but I'm not sure that the direction in which the Liberals are going, say, on that issue is the right one.
Mr. Julian, I want to ask you, are you getting any signals from the Liberals that they're going to meet the requirements your party has when it comes to a pharmacare legislation package?
Well, they have no choice. They have to make sure that the bill that I presented 2 years ago, Canada Pharmacare Act, that was voted against by Conservatives and Liberals, actually passes by the end of this year. And that we also put in place dental care for people with disabilities, for seniors, and for families with youth under the age of 18. These are absolute conditions in terms of what we are forcing the government to do. We also believe that the housing crisis has to be addressed. We've had successive Conservative and Liberal governments that have done nothing to address the crisis in the lack of affordable housing in this country. And to do that, we need to ensure that the ultra-rich in this country, the billionaires, actually pay what they owe Canadians. We lose over $30 billion a year, as the Parliamentary Budgetary Officer has told us, to overseas tax havens alone. And what we need to do is turn back from the Conservative and Liberal policies that have allowed the ultra-rich to not pay what they owe Canadians and actually insist that they do, because what we need to do is invest in Canadian families. And the only way to do that is to have a fair tax system.
Specifically on pharmacare, though, are you getting signals that what you have proposed is going to be in place on the timeline that your party has demanded it be there?
The timeline is very clear. It's available to everybody. The agreement is available to everybody. What we're forcing the Liberals to do is available to everybody. It has to be done by the end of this year. It has to pass through the House of Commons. And this, I think, is a significant victory for Canadians, because 2 years ago, Conservative and Liberal MPs almost unanimously voted against putting in place pharmacare. Now, what does that mean in my riding? That we have constituents, I have constituents that are paying over $1,000 a month for heart medication. We need to ensure that we have in place public universal pharmacare so that those Canadians, instead of scrimping on their medication and perhaps dying, as the Canadian Nurses Association indicates, hundreds die every year, or forced to lose their home or not put food on the table because there's no provision for pharmacare, these families will actually get the supports that they so critically need. So it's clear that Jagmeet Singh and the NDP caucus are making a difference in this Parliament.
Ms. Lantsman, I want to ask you, what is the #1 priority your party would like to see achieved in this sitting?
I think the number one priority for Conservatives is also the number one priority for Canadians, and it's to get that cost of living down. We've seen inflationary deficits drive those interest rates where mortgage payments are out of control. Rental housing is unattainable in the place certainly where I'm from and across the GTA, Lower Mainland and Vancouver, and now all over the country. So it's cost of living, and then of course addressing the issues of crime. We've seen a massive spike in violent crime, 32% since this government has come to power, 92% when it comes to violent homicides, and we've got to look at bail reform, and we've got to look at making sure that if somebody does the crime, they do the time in this country, and they're put behind bars where they can't reoffend. That's what everybody where I'm from is talking about.
I was going to say, I know that you are sponsoring, you want to see an emergency debate around violence, particularly in Toronto, with some of the attacks that we've seen on the Toronto transit system. I'm curious as to solutions. So this is a conversation. This is certainly something that people are talking about in the Greater Toronto Area. What do the Conservatives see as solutions to fix this challenge?
It's not only a conversation in the Greater Toronto Area, although we've seen incident after incident, day after day of violent random attacks, from stabbings to swarmings to shootings. But it's a problem all over the country. Now we're seeing it in Edmonton, and we're seeing it in Vancouver, and we're seeing it in our city centres. And one of the solutions that we want to talk about, one of the solutions that 13 premiers have all signed a letter to talk about, is about bail reform. Police unions have raised concern. Police chiefs have raised concern, because it turns out that many of those who are offenders or who are causing these violent crimes or who are perpetrating these violent crimes are reoffenders and are out on bail. So we want to have a serious conversation about, it's not enough just to arrest somebody, but finding a way to keep them behind bars and to keep the public safe, to have them safe in their communities and safe to ride public transit. That's a right.
Mr. Julian, go ahead, Mr. Julian.
Well, just on 2 points. In terms of greedflation, the fact that we've seen grocery store chains jack up their prices unbelievably high. We haven't heard a word from the Conservatives or the Liberals addressing what has been a profound impact on families actually being able to put food on the table. And the issue of crime, I think it's important to note. I was in the House of Commons under the Harper government when they destroyed the National Network of Crime Prevention Centers, which did phenomenal work in addressing crime right across this country. So Conservatives talk pretty words, but when it came to action under their government, they actually gutted what was an indispensable tool to ensure that we actually lowered the crime rate right across the country, which is why, again, we come back to healthcare and mental health supports. We need to ensure that Canadians are safe. One of the ways to do this is to actually invest in mental health supports right across the country, something that we've seen both under Conservatives and Liberals. It just hasn't happened.
Ms. Lantsman, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to Mr. Julian's criticism there.
Mr. Julian's party is the party that brought forward the broken bail system supported by the Liberals that we currently have today. And there's no question that mental health is an issue. But when you see violent attack, random violent attack after violent attack in the city's largest urban center on a transit system that millions of people have used and more than 10,000 people work at, the question is not just mental health. It's about criminals and making sure that they're not reoffending, that we have them behind bars when they commit crimes so that people can feel safe in their city.
The actual reality is we have to prevent crime from happening in the first place. That's what the National Crime Prevention Centers did. And it was very cost effective. You spend $1 on crime prevention, you save $6 in policing costs and court costs and prison costs. And it is incomprehensible to me that the Harper government destroyed that network of crime prevention centers. This was a short-sighted and irresponsible decision that we're still seeing the impacts of today.
Here's the thing, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been in power for 7 years. So is that something that your party wants to push for now that that was 7 years ago? And I respect that you have the criticism about the long-term consequences there. But do you want to push the Liberal government to do something along those lines? We've been saying now for years that both Conservatives and Liberals are wrong in not investing to provide the supports for crime prevention. And we've raised this in the House. And both Liberals and Conservatives have refused to acknowledge the importance of actually stopping crime before it happens.
This is why I think the NDP approach is smart on crime. And I think the NDP approach and what Jagmeet Singh has brought forward is actually the right way to ensure we're lowering the crime rate.
All right, we're going to pause the conversation there only because we have run out of time today. Thank you very much, Melissa Lantsman, the Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, and NDP leader, House Leader Peter Julian. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.